This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to Theglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy, How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Good evening. Welcome to the Theglazov Game. Tonight, another fantastic program with another fantastic guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember we're a fan-generated program, so we need all the help we can get, especially because of all the continued shadow banning and persecution by the deep state. Please subscribe to us at YouTube and at Rumble and press instant notifications. Visit us at JamieGlazov.com and subscribe to our newsletter there. And please donate if you can to help us keep going. Follow us on Twitter and on Facebook at Jamie Glazov. And most importantly, support Annie Cyrus and follow all her great work at liveuptofreedom.com. She's on the front lines fighting for America and freedom throughout the world. What an honor and a privilege to have with us this evening Hannah Faulkner, patriot and public speaker, host of the Hannah Faulkner Show, and the author of the new book coming out on January 1st, 2025, Last Chance to Save Our Republic. Hannah, what an honor and privilege to have you on the Theglazov Game.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to get into all the deep things happening in our country, all the things that we discussed in Last Chance to Save Our Republic. So I appreciate what you're doing in the fight for freedom. I appreciate Annie. I appreciate Patriot TV. And we need more patriots in this fight, ready to take back America. So I appreciate you guys.
Well, we appreciate you, Hannah. You are quite an individual, if that's one way to say it. Can you give us a little bit of background on yourself? Tell our audience who you are.
Yeah, well, I got involved in the political movement in a sense. I started a Turning Point USA chapter, which is an organization founded by Charlie Kirk. For if your listeners don't know, I mean, he has paved the movement for Gen Zers. I really think he's probably one of the biggest reasons why we won the youth this election, way more than we have in previous elections. But I got started with Turning Point USA when I was 13 years old. I started a Turning Point chapter, and we had a few meetings, a few events, but I really got involved when I was 15, and it was because my 7-year-old sister at the time was paralyzed in a freak swimming accident. And because of her paralyzation, because of her injury, we were placed in 6 different medical facilities. And this was in 2022. And if you remember, this was around the time that in the late mid 2022, we started to see all of these activists and influencers expose the hospitals and the medical industry for performing these genital mutilation surgeries on children. And so as we were traveling to these different facilities, my sister was there. I was curious. So I started asking the front desk questions. I said, hey, do you guys do, quote unquote, gender affirming care at this hospital? And every single one of them said, yes. If you need more information, we can connect you with a doctor. So all of the doctors I was talking to, all of the front desk staff members and the nurses, they said that they did. And I remember in one meeting, it was with the pediatrician. It was a pediatrician in residency. She came in to give my little sister advice on her injury. And she had a pin on her chest that said they, them. And so she was expressing her pronouns, quote unquote, which is, it doesn't even make sense because that's not even, if you look at literacy, that's not accurate, right? You don't say they, them, where are you? But I was thinking in my mind, okay, so here we are, we're in this medical facility. They're giving my sister advice, medical advice, yet can't even determine whether or not they are male or female. And so I realized that this is a crisis. This is an experiment on our children that we're seeing, an experiment on our generation. And I started to see stories like Chloe Cole, a 18-year-old detransitioner at the time who was chemically castrated at 13, and then 15, they removed her healthy breast and genitals. And then at 16, she realized she had made the worst decision of her life. And so I held a Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally in January of 2023. And then General Flynn invited me out to the Reawaken America tour. And then since then, we started the show, and now we've got the book, Last Chance to Save Our Republic. So it's been a wild ride, but it's all for this mission to save this country, to save our republic. So I'm excited.
I'm a little bit envious of your energy, Hannah. I'm slowing down a little bit, but you're inspiring me. Hannah, so much to say here. So much Satanism right in front of our eyes, but just let me go slowly here. What happened to your sister, and is she okay?
Yeah, no, she's still paralyzed from the chest down right now. But it was basically just a freak swimming accident that she was involved in. She was swimming in a creek with like 40 other kids, and this girl decided to jump off the cliff area and landed on her back. So she could have landed on anyone that was swimming in the creek, but she landed on my sister's back. So it's tragic. I mean, it was a horrific accident. So she's fine now. I mean, she's thriving. The joy that she has is totally from the Lord. She's an encouragement. I remember the Thanksgiving after her accident, we were all going around the table telling each other, what we're thankful for. And she said, I'm thankful for my legs. Even though my legs aren't alive right now, I know that God is going to heal them in his timing. So whether I walk on earth or in heaven, I know that God's going to heal them, whether, I, want it in my timing or not. And so she's just an encouragement. She's actually about to do, she won Miss Tennessee recently in a little pageant that she did. And she's going to be doing like some national speech competition pageant thing. So she's thriving, doing amazing. And it's all because of the Lord. I mean, she's such an inspiration, but she's doing great now.
Okay, well, our prayers are with your sister, Hannah, and your faith is moving me very much. May I ask, you were raised in a Christian household. How did it happen that your sister and you are such strong Christians and have such a strong faith?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a great family unit. My parents are very strong in their faith. They have a strong marriage, and have always talked to us about if trials and tribulations come, like it's not God's fault that these things happen. Like sin is in the world. Like we're humans. Like bad things happen to good people. But that doesn't mean that, there isn't a God. That doesn't mean that God doesn't exist or he doesn't like us. That's just the result of sin. That's just the result of when Adam and Eve fell in the garden. And, too, my dad and mom have always talked to us, like when trials and tribulations come, like understanding that pain can purify the heart and always finding the good out of all of those situations. But my dad was a pastor for 9 years. He was an evangelist. He's been to over 13 countries. So my dad, has a testimony and of itself, my mom. So I think just watching my parents live out their faith is so important. And that's actually what I talk about in my book, is the greatest issue I believe facing our country right now. And that's the breakdown of the family. The lack of strong mothers, of strong fathers, in our country, it lacks so much. We have so many divided families. And unfortunately, our government right now, the welfare system, the way our legislation works, it incentivizes divorce. It incentivizes broken families. And I don't think that's any coincidence. We can say this is a communist agenda, but ultimately, this is Satan's agenda. Collapse the family to control society. So I have to give, credit ultimately to the Lord, but to my family. I think it all starts in the home. It starts with the parents and the example that they give to their children, for sure.
Hannah, I have the feeling I'm in the presence of someone very unique and great. Hannah, so the way you were raised by mom and dad and in that Christian faith and environment, I think it was almost impossible for you to have become a leftist, I think, right? That's most of it right there, because there's so many young people that are leftists and brainwashed by the media, etc. You didn't fall into that because of the buffer that your dad and mom gave you in terms of the Christian faith, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I will say too, I think so often parents kind of expect their kids to just know the why behind the what automatically. And what I mean by that is a lot of times parents don't explain to their children, why are they Christians? Why are we pro-life? Why are we, conservatives? And I think it's so important. Like, you've got to start from a young age, first off, and showing that example to your children. But a lot of times parents will just kind of assume that their kids are strong Christian conservatives, and then they send them off to a woke college. And then 3 years later, their kids come home and they're radical leftists. They're all of a sudden pro-death, pro-abortion, voting Democrat, all these things. They're like, what has happened to my kid? And I really believe it's because they didn't have a firm foundation to begin with. They weren't strong in their beliefs to begin with. They didn't understand why they believed in what they believed, and they didn't understand what their parents were teaching. And of course, we're all going to be, tempted by many different things. Like, we're all going to struggle with different things. But it's the ability to stand firm in your faith when those trials and tribulations, when those temptations, or those, countering influences, like, we're surrounding ourselves with a lot of leftists or atheists, but being able to remain strong in your faith. So I think that's where a parent's job has to come in and be the largest voice in their kid's life. I mean, that is my message all the time to parents, is be the largest voice in your kid's life.
Amen. Hannah, it's usually inappropriate to, I think, talk about people's age or ask these questions, especially, I think, to ask a woman her age. But I think this is a little bit of an exceptional circumstance at the moment. May I ask you how old you are?
I'm 17.
This is absolutely amazing. And I read your book. When did you, your book is the writing of a scholar that has an infinite amount of knowledge. When did you read all of these books and material and get this incredible education?
So I've always read a lot of books. I remember when I was probably 7, and this goes back to having great parents. I remember when I was 7, my dad bought me this, it was very thick. It was 3-4 inches thick, and it was a Little House on the Prairie series. And my dad was like, listen, I have a challenge for you. You know how to read. Try to read this in a few months. Try to read the whole thing. So I finished the whole thing. I was super excited. And my dad gave me another book to read. And so I've always, my dad has always said,
When you were 7,
I was 7, yes.
Okay.
And so my dad has always said, readers are leaders, leaders are readers. And if you want to be a leader of society, you need to be a reader. You can't just, go by and not read books. That's, the books and the people you hang around are going to be half the person you become. So choose wisely. So I would say, as it pertains to what I wrote in Last Chance to Save Our Republic, almost all of the stuff in that book, I did not even know even existed. The history, half of the history, until a year or two ago. And it was because, I started writing the book specifically with the gender ideology chapter, because I was, personally seeing what was happening with gender ideology. And so I started writing, and then I went into the other chapters, and I was just astonished. The history, the founding of our nation, that no school is teaching children, even private schools aren't teaching students about this history. So I think, really just over the past year and a half, I was able to just see the real history and the roots of these issues.
I'm surprised Trump didn't appoint you right now for press secretary or for a cabinet position. I wouldn't be surprised. Hannah, what is a book that you read? Who is an author, perhaps, that inspired you? Just somebody, or a work or a person that really, really made an impact on you.
Okay, so my favorite book, it's called The Cross and the Switchblade. Have you heard of it?
Vaguely.
Okay, The Cross and the Switchblade, and I literally am losing the author, the name of the guy.
Okay.
The Cross and the Switchblade. I literally just had it. I had it on my desk the other day, and I don't know why I'm forgetting the author. But that is an incredible book. If it comes to me, the name of the author, it's an incredible book. It is just the story of this man who he was a pastor, and he felt called to go to New York and minister to these gang members and to start a revival in New York. And he was just a small town church. They didn't have any money, and he followed the Lord's calling. He went to New York, and they faced a lot of trials and tribulation. He was almost killed by several of the gang members there. And then they ended up starting this revival. The revival happened, and like hundreds upon hundreds of the gang members there that were, I mean, murderers, rapists. I mean, these were like not just your average just drug dealer. Like these people were very, I mean, they were committing heinous crimes, and they gave their life to the Lord. And many of them are like leaders in churches today. And okay, it's have you heard of teen? What is it called? It's the, I'm losing.
It's okay. We'll figure it out.
I'm going to remember it, and I'm going to get it to you because I mean, everybody should read this book, but it's not Teen Quest. So I don't remember, but they have a teen organization now, and it's phenomenal. But I love John Maxwell's books. Great books. Everybody, if you want to be financially literate, you should read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, I think everybody should read that book. It's an incredible book. Okay. But those are just a couple. I really wish I remember the name of the guy that wrote my favorite book.
We'll figure it out. Thank you, Hannah. I was so impressed by your book, and definitely the family. And as Christians, we know that this is the underpinning, the central bulwark of society, of our civilization. And definitely Satan is up to something when he tries to break the family. And we know that Karl Marx and Engels and the left in general, they really want to destroy the family. So you really hit that home very powerfully. And so it's a bit of a complicated issue in terms of feminism, etc., because all of us want to see human rights for everybody. And obviously, we see how Satan works here in terms of, you see, men are supposed to treat women as they treat the church, and women have a certain way that they should treat their husband, and a husband has a certain way to treat his wife. And when men violate that, and when Satan is able to successfully get men to abuse women, and so, for instance, we see in the Islamic world under Islamic gender apartheid, and the Theglazov Gang has dedicated ourselves to fighting for women throughout the world, especially under Islam, where we fight for women's rights, where men are abusing women. And yet the catastrophe there, and how Satan works, is he gets the victims to sometimes be tempted by a certain ideology. So, for instance, there's injustice in the world, for instance, in terms of poverty or oppression, and people start to think that communism is the answer. And unfortunately, when women are abused by horrible men and within horrible institutions, there could be the conclusion that instead of trying to fight for their rights on certain levels, women are told that you should become men. And that's not the answer. And so feminism on many levels, in terms of how we understand it, is a good thing if it's giving women their rights, but it was framed and founded on some flawed assumptions that women should become men. So that's where things went wrong. Give us your wisdom on that, where feminism on many dimensions turned out to have very pernicious earthly incarnations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of people in our country, even conservatives, will say that the first wave of feminism began in America. It didn't. The first wave of feminism began in Eastern Europe. And it kind of came over to America through various people. It kind of just fled its way to America and then impacted American culture. And so it came over here, and we kind of saw like the second wave in the early 1900s. And then we saw the third wave leading into like the 1960s. And that's when they really started to push this idea that men and women aren't different. There's no difference between men and women. They can do the same things. And then we saw Planned Parenthood. We saw the feminist movement really starting to push gender ideology into the schools. They were the leader. The feminist movement and Planned Parenthood was the leader in gender ideology, sex education, abortion material in public schools today. So you see all the sexual material, that's from Planned Parenthood and the feminist movement pushing it all the way back to the 80s and 90s. And so we started to see this shift. They were saying that there's no difference between male and female. It's just a social construct. We saw Betty Friedman, the author of The Feminine Mystique, say that women are being oppressed by the patriarch, which they can't define, of course, that traditional marriage is oppressing women. They aren't able to do whatever they want, wherever they want, and they should believe in Margaret Sanger's agenda. They should believe in the feminist ideology, what I like to call the sexual revolution, because that's what it was. And they like to push this notion that men were the ones that were allowed to do whatever they want. And that's not true. I don't condone men doing whatever they want, wherever they want. Men have a certain purpose and women have a certain purpose. Men are called to lead, protect, and provide. Women are called to nurture, to submit to their husbands. And that some people say, oh, that's misogynistic. That's just a basic fact, okay? You don't even have to be a Christian to understand that. But if you are a Christian, it makes it a lot easier. And so we started to see this shift within the feminist movement. We started to see this shift within culture, women starting to get out and to work because they believed that they were being oppressed by the quote unquote patriarch. And so they get out in the workforce. And then they realized, oh, now here we are in 2024, where 45% of women ages 24 to 45 by 2030, if we continue the path we're on, there's only going to be 45% of those women are going to be married and unmarried and childless. And then now we look at statistics and we see that this generation of women is the most oppressed or the most depressed, the most unhappy, anxiety-ridden generation of women that we've seen. But the feminist movement was to make women happier, was to make women more fulfilled. But of course, that's not what it was for. This was about population control. And we see that when the feminist movement first began with Margaret Sanger pushing her notion of birth control and abortion, it was about population control. It was about dividing and conquering the nuclear family. And even Lenin said that if or Karl Marx, he identified the family unit as like this private ownership, essentially. And in order to collapse the family, he needs to pit men and women against one another, which is successfully what the feminist movement has done. And I do want to say this too, because we wonder why men are in our spaces, right? We wonder why we're debating whether or not men should be in our bathrooms and our sports. And people will say, well, I'm a feminist and I'm against men in bathrooms. But that's like an oxymoron, because feminism is the preliminary phase almost to transgenderism. In order to get to where men and women are confused on their identity, well, then you first have to push the notion that there's no difference between male and female, which is what feminism did. So I think it's kind of ignorant for us to just suggest that feminism is fighting against men and women's bathrooms, but they're not, because they're the reason. The feminist movement is the reason why we have men and women's spaces today.
Thank you, Hannah. And definitely you can just see it, how the forces at large, the powers that be, are pitting men against women and women against men. You can see that happening in our society, and definitely a war on men, which I think as Christians we understand that it's really a war on the Father, on our Father. And there's definitely a war against women, but of a different type, because they're being told that it's great to be men rather than women. I have to say that just with this hatred that I see everywhere, just even scrolling through social media, there's this new thing too. It's called the ick movement or whatever. They just find the ick. There's all these women that are saying what they find ick in men. And it's up to like 10,000 things now. The way a man walks, the way he sits, the way a man plays with his children, the way he looks at the TV. It's just this constant attack on men. And there's sometimes when I'll even see a video where I'll just be with some friends and I'll see a little daughter loving her daddy. And sometimes I'm a little bit even shocked and taken aback. I'm very moved, but I think, wow, there's a female that still loves a male, and it's the daughter in our society that still loves her daddy. But then I think, I wonder how long that'll last, because the powers that be will get to her soon, because almost everyone that I'm surrounded by on a few dimensions, I don't mean in my life, I obviously know normal, good people, but when I go into society, when I go to the gyms and I go here and I go here in LA, it's right in front of your face, this hatred of men. And There's almost no romance anymore because of social media, of course, and Instagram and OnlyFans and Me Too. There's almost no even love songs anymore. Something has happened, hasn't it, Hannah?
No, absolutely. And I do want to respond to what you said earlier about, if we really want to talk about women being oppressed, we need to head on down to Islamic countries. I've been to the West Bank. I spent several days in the West Bank. It's not safe. It really isn't. I was in Nablus and Jericho and Jerusalem and Bethlehem, and I stayed in these cities. And Nablus was probably one of the most dangerous cities that I stayed in the West Bank. And you walk around and these women, you can't even see their eyes. You can't see their fingernails. They're completely covered head to toe. And if they're caught looking or making eye contact, like if they take their thing off, like that's like treason against their husband and they could be killed for it, according to the Quran, right? According to their law. And so you see all of this feminists for Palestine, the queers for Palestine. And I mean, this is what happens in communist countries. Lenin said to the Soviet Union that he was happy to use the young people as useful idiots because they were following him and they became prey to his agenda and they were just kind of just like falling into it the same way that these young people at these college campuses are falling into the queers for Palestine, because little do they know, if they head down to Palestine, if they head down to Gaza, they're not going to last long there. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that to be crude but this is just the truth. Like, I've seen it with my own eyes, how evil these people can be, how they are oppressing women. There's no freedom in Islam. There's no freedom at all. And you talk about our country. I mean, in my book, I highlight the founding of our country, the founding of America, why we came to America in the first place, to seek out religious freedom. And a lot of times the left will tell us that we want a theocracy, that we want a state-sponsored religion. We don't want a state-sponsored religion. There's no freedom within a theocracy, just like Iran and Saudi Arabia. But our founders recognized that in order for a nation to thrive, in order for a nation to truly be free, it had to be a nation founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And I don't believe that it's any coincidence that we're seeing the statistics that we're seeing. We're seeing the loneliness epidemic, the unhappiness of our generation. This is the most biblically illiterate generation. I don't believe these statistics are any coincidence. When we've rejected God from every facet of our society, we've removed God from the home, and the family unit again is broken. I mean, the divorce rate is skyrocketing. The marriage rate is plummeting. People are getting married less and less every year, and it's really sad. It really is.
Absolutely, Hannah. Thank you so much. And you cover this also brilliantly in your book. And look, I don't know how all this works. We have very little brains in terms of understanding God and the spiritual war, but just we may grasp a little bit of it. So I think that the more sin, the more gas goes into the devil's gas tank, and the more souls we lose. I talked to some priests and pastors and theologians, and they explained some stuff to me. So we're in such an evil time right now, and some say that it's the most evil generation, even worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. And I think that the devil's gas tank, it's on some levels what's happening is the souls he's grabbing, and more people are dying in the womb than outside of the womb. So this child sacrifice that's going on, and you cover this very powerfully in your book on abortion. There's something with this issue. There's something with this mass murder, this Holocaust happening to little unborn babies that's empowering the devil and leading to this horror show that we're facing, right?
Yeah, well, even if you look at Dietrich Bonhoeffer, an incredible man of God, he was a warrior for truth, fighting back against the Nazis in Nazi Germany. He shares several times in his books about the church in Nazi Germany and how oftentimes they'd be placed beside railroad tracks, railways, and they'd hear the train come by every Sunday, and they'd hear the cries, they'd hear the pleas, the calls for help from the Jewish people in the train carts, and their way to drown out the sounds, they said, was just to sing louder. And unfortunately, I believe that's the reality of many American churches today. where they're placed within mile radius, just a few miles, a few blocks away from Planned Parenthood, from these death clinics, as I call them, and yet never dare bring up the issue of abortion. They'll mention the name of Dietrich Bonhoeffer and how courageous and amazing that man is, but then they never even talk about the Holocaust that's happening to the unborn children, the babies in the womb in our world today. And to me, it's like, it's honestly a slap in the face to Dietrich Bonhoeffer if you're going to sit there in your church and you're going to talk about this man and of him being heroic and courageous, and you're just, imagine if Dietrich Bonhoeffer walked in that church today. I think he'd call them cowards. I really think he would, because to sit there, to know that evil is happening. He said it is, silence in the face of evil is evil itself. So for us to know what is wrong, to know that evil is happening in our country, to sit back, watch it happen and do nothing is frankly the most egregious thing that we could possibly do. And it's, in my book, it's like, how did we get to the point where we have murdered millions, hundreds of millions of babies? Because this isn't just America. This isn't just an American issue. This is a global issue. We have murdered hundreds of millions of babies in their mother's womb in the name of a woman's right to choose. How sick are we as a world? Like, how evil have we become? We literally believe that it's a woman's right to choose to go to a doctor, to take a pill, to suffocate her child until it dies, or to have it surgically removed limb by limb, and they crush the baby's skull and then suck it out with a vacuum that's 10 to 20 times more powerful than your household vacuum cleaner, all in the name of a woman's right to choose. How have we gotten to a point where this is happening, right? So, we dissect that all in the book, Last Chance to Save Our Republic. This is the harsh truth. I don't say these things lightly, because we have beat around the bush for far too long in America. We have way too many politicians, way too many pastors, leaders that want to, kind of just walk on eggshells around these terms. Now, we've got to speak the truth, and we've got to speak it boldly, and we've got to get back to radical language. Even our founding fathers talked about, give me liberty or give me death. This is freedom or tyranny that we're talking about.
Hannah, thank you so much. And thank you. In your book, not only do you expose the evil of the left and of this agenda and show how taking God out of the classroom and out of society has led to all this, you also call out the cowardice and the silence of the churches and of the church and of Christian leaders. And that's a real tragedy as well, right?
That's right. Well, America, the reason why we came to America in the first place was for religious freedom. The leader of America is the church. We are called to be the leader of this country. Where the church goes is where the country goes. Where the country goes is where the world goes. And the reason we're in the situation we're in is because the church has failed. The church has believed this lie that politics and religion should be separate, which is a flat out lie. It's a lie from Satan, ultimately, because Satan wants us to believe that we shouldn't be involved in politics. Satan wants us to sit on our couches and, watch our football games because we're not supposed to be involved in politics. That's not our issue to deal with. Satan wants us to just sit at home and do that, right? And so because the church has believed this notion that politics and religion is to be separate, now the devil, our enemy, has gotten his hand into every single facet, every single institution in our society, and perverted it, ultimately. And if you want to talk about freedom, talk about religious freedom and how politics and religion can't be separated. Look at the Bible. Look at the entire Old Testament. Look at the entire New Testament. It is literally politics and religion, all of it. The entire Bible is politics and religion. King David, King Solomon, all of the kings, they were both spiritual and political leaders. So any man or any document that governs the affairs of men, that's a spiritual document. Our Constitution is a spiritual document, whether you want to believe it or not. This is a spiritual document that's governing the affairs of men. And so you cannot separate politics from religion, because God put them together. And because we believe that lie, Satan has got his hand into every single facet of our country.
Well, absolutely. And the morons will accuse you of, Hannah's trying to argue for some kind of theocracy and everything. No, we're simply saying, or I don't want to speak for you here, but that we have to fight for virtue, and there has to be morals. And the founding fathers, when I studied American history, I was fascinated when I was studying the framing of the Constitution. The founding fathers were very worried that the society they were framing would not work if there was no virtue. And so this is the key. we can't have great discussions like this with wonderful guests like Hannah Faulkner if we didn't have sponsors. So we're going to take a quick sponsor break.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a My Pillow or not, you need to get the brand new My Pillow 2.0. Call or go to mypillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit mypillow.com.
And that's right. Make sure to go to mypillow.com or mystore.com and use promo code GG21. You can get a discount of up to 60% off on all the amazing products, and you're going to be helping out the Theglazov Gang and Mike Lindell. And if you like one-of-a-kind handmade art, make sure to go to lutfstudio.com and purchase resin art pieces made by our producer, the one and only Annie Cyrus. Use promo code Theglazov to get special discounts. You're going to be helping out Annie as well as the Theglazov Gang. And we're back with the great Hannah Faulkner. Hannah, welcome back to the Theglazov Gang.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
I'm so excited, but also a little bit overwhelmed in a good way at your just your energy and your wonderful faith, your brilliance. I'm going to just take a little break for a minute and bring in somebody else that's wonderful. Annie Cyrus, what do you think about our incredible guest?
Well, I have mentioned this to Hannah herself off air that I think she's amazing. And I think it is for people like Hannah that we now have a generation of, I think Gen Z is the right word to use, that are stopping and thinking, which is the main part. There was a time when there were literally, sad to say, zombies, and they didn't even think. But thanks to Hannah and her parents, now we have Gen Z generation out there thinking, having a discussion, which I want to go there with you, Hannah. You know, you have mentioned on your own show, on other interviews, that, you know, it all things evil, Democrats, feminazis, all of them aside, it is also up to us. We need to hold ourselves accountable. Do you mind sharing that thought in expansion with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we really want to take back this country, if we want to make change happen, and I said this earlier on our podcast, is that, you know, we won this election. President Trump won, which is a great victory. But this republic is in our hands, right? We only have 4 years. I mean, Ben Franklin said, you have a republic if you can keep it. And so what happens next in this country is up to us. What are we going to do when the issue comes knocking at our door? Are we going to sit back and be quiet and do nothing? Or are we going to get involved? Are we going to be able to tell our future children, our future grandchildren, that when evil came knocking on our door, that we we took a chance. We got involved. And even if that meant losing friends, even if that meant losing job opportunities, losing future careers, we fought for the children. We fought for the most vulnerable. We fought for the future generations, no matter how hard the persecution got. Are you going to be able to say that? Or are you going to be able to tell your kids that you just sat back and do nothing? And I mean, I'll leave that up to the audience to decide. But for me personally, I want to be able to come face to face, because I'm as a Christian, I know that we're all going to come face to face with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And he's going to ask us, what did you do when it was your turn to take a chance? What did you do when it was your turn to stand for the most innocent? What did you do when it was your turn? And so I hope, and my prayer for everyone right now watching, even if you aren't a Christian, I mean, these are common sense issues that we're fighting. Regardless of whether or not you are a Christian, like, these are common sense issues. But you mentioned earlier, Mr. Jamie, the idea that virtue and morality. I mean, John Adams said, our Constitution was created only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. The most frequently mentioned book from our founding fathers, it was the Bible. Because again, like you said, they recognize that in order for America to thrive, it must be a nation that upholds the creator of morality, and that's God. In order for us to have a moral society, we must uphold the creator of morality, and that's God. So I don't know if that answers your question, Annie, but
absolutely. Yes, it does. Now let me go back to something you brought up about the churches across the street or 2 blocks down from Planned Parenthood, and where they are slaughtering unborn kids. One of the things that has always been fascinating about you, Hannah, coming from where I come from and doing what I do, is that you are 17. You are so busy writing a book, owning your business, having your 1776culture.com, which I strongly suggest for our audience to check it out. She has amazing products, including the beautiful hat she's wearing. So support her by going to that website. But you're busy, and you're also, you're trying to graduate ahead of everybody else, which is a topic of its own. But you know about Islam, you know about Sharia, you know about the lack of freedoms. How is it that we have pastors out there in churches promoting interfaith dialogue, inviting their people to go to mosques and listen to imams and join Islam? How did we get there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes down to the society of weak men. I mean, we have way too many weak men. I think a lot of them know that what they're saying is wrong, but they're afraid of pushback is what it comes down to. They're afraid of someone in the church getting a little upset because they aren't accepting, quote unquote, to other faiths. I really think that's what it comes down to. And so many churches that I've been to, because I've been to literally every denomination of church, multiple different churches within those denominations. I've talked to these pastors. My dad has talked to these pastors, and they're just afraid. They're literally just afraid of what's going to come against them. But this is what I said at the Reawaken America tour. If we aren't willing to speak up now, when the persecution is this light, when we might get a few death threats, but nothing's going to come. Like, they're not going to come, dude. They're the people with 3 followers. You have no idea who they are, sitting in their basement. If we aren't willing to speak up now, when the persecution is this little, how do we think we're going to speak up when they're killing Christians in the street? How do we think we're going to speak up if it becomes like Nazi Germany again? God forbid, but shame on us to ever think that it couldn't become like that if we stay silent. How do we think we're going to speak up then if we aren't willing to speak up now? Because I think if we're going to sit back and be silent now, I think it would be ignorant of us to just think that all of a sudden we're going to speak up and, protect and hide the Jews, like many Germans said. I don't think we're going to be like that. If we're being silent now, I think we're going to be the ones that, bow down to Hitler because we don't want to die. And I don't say, I'm not trying to offend people. Well, actually, I mean, this might be offensive, but truth is offensive. Okay. I think, the reason why these pastors are saying what they're saying is because they're afraid of what might come against them. I think that's ultimately what it is. I mean, the whole idea of the feminist movement, the breakdown of the family, like, where did this idea begin, right? Well, you go back to the Garden of Eden. Like, why did Adam and Eve sin in the Garden of Eden? Because Adam wasn't being the leader that God had created him to be, and Eve was being emotional, which is the same thing we're seeing today. Like, why did women vote for Democrats usually? Why did 76% of women vote for Democrats in the 2020 election because they were voting with their emotions. Oh, they're going to vote for women's right. So men got to stand up, be strong, be the leader, be the protector, do what God has called you to do, you know, fall into your purpose as a man. And the same thing for the woman. You know, understand your role as a woman, your role to nurture, even if you aren't having children, even if you aren't married, you still have the role to nurture and to care for those around you. And we've seen that all throughout scripture, even with unmarried and childless women in the Bible. So we each have a very significant role. And when we don't fall into our role, that's when chaos and confusion starts to happen, which is what we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. Again, you are amazing. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Jamie, for including me in this discussion.
Thank you, Annie. Hannah, thank you. Very profound. Hannah, there's some leftist women that are very upset and going crazy on social media and TikTok, and they're shaving their head, and there's some kind of a sex strike happening. And I mean, I just lost 3 nights of sleep, so worried, because apparently Whoopi Goldberg has joined this sex strike. I mean, I just don't know how the men are just going to go on. What is this about? It's something very pathological.
Yeah, well, this is like their way to get back at men, because they believe that men are oppressing them by going and voting for President Trump. But if we want to talk about the feminist movement and oppression or oppressing women or whatever they want to call it, I mean, first off, the feminist movement is the one that's advocating for a worldwide legalization of prostitution, which I believe is one of the most degrading, one of the most objectifying things that you could possibly advocate for a woman. So we want to talk about women being oppressed. Let's talk about what the feminist movement is advocating for. Selling your body, selling your soul for the world to see. That's what's degrading, and that's what's oppressive, at least in my mind. But also, we look at the pornography industry. We look at the OnlyFans industry. So 98% of people selling themselves are women. 98% of the people in the content is women and children. 99% of the people that are watching, 99% is men. So, I mean, this is when it comes down to women have to think highly of themselves. You've got to understand your worth. Understand that you were created more than just to sell your body, to just be half naked, even on Instagram, even if you aren't selling. Like, this is what I talk to, young individuals. I was talking with a young girl the other day, and she was 13, and she was showing me her Instagram, and she's, half naked in all of her pictures. And I'm like, so what drives you to that? What is causing you to post those things? She's like, oh, I like the attention. And so we have created, a generation of young girls now that are looking to these older girls on the OnlyFans pictures and the videos and all this stuff that, like, oh, I want to be pretty like that. It's just this unrealistic culture. Everybody's just seeking out instant gratification, ultimately, is what it is. But the movement, getting back to the movement, I don't think there's anything wrong.
And Hannah, can I just interrupt for a second? What's so tragic is, I saw a couple shows, they were asking a lot of these modern Western women and the young women, if you had a choice between finding a good husband or giving up your phone and Instagram and OnlyFans, etc., I think we know how a lot of these young women have answered. And it's very tragic, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, it really is. And again, that comes down to fatherlessness. A lot of these girls don't have a strong father in their life. They don't have a strong male figure, and they're seeking out, because if the girl at a young age doesn't have the love and support and care from her father, she's going to seek it out in other ways. She's going to find that love and quote unquote attention and support from other ways. And I really believe that's why a lot of these girls are getting on OnlyFans or getting on, these pornography sites or sending inappropriate pictures to people, is because they aren't getting the attention or the love that they really desire and that they are created to get from their father. So that's when fathers come in, and just being a good father to your kids, being a good husband to your wife. This, and again, like Annie said, like, this starts with us as individuals, like making sure that our heart is in the right place. Even as Christians, and that we're talking about these issues. Is so important, because people aren't having these conversations that we're having right now. It's very few far in between to find people having these conversations. about the lack of fatherlessness, about about the lack of fathers in homes, and strong mothers, and wives that are submitting to their husbands, and husbands that are honoring their wives. So, man, it's sad, it's tragic, but we got to get back to what made this country great, and that's God.
Amen. And if I was a Marxist and leftist and want to destroy society, get rid of the dad. Hannah, we got to go. We just got a little bit of time. Give me, please, and I hate to ask a brilliant person such as yourself to be brief, because I wish we had another couple hours. I hope you'll come back to the Theglazov Game. Just give me a sentence or two with something. I'm going to say a name and you give me a sentence or two, okay? Okay. Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. He has committed treason against the American people. 100%. The Biden-Harris regime has committed treason against the American people for the egregious things that they have allowed to happen.
Obama.
If we want to talk about who has created the greatest threat to our religious freedom, I think he is one of the most. He has imposed some of the greatest threats to our religious freedom. He has stripped Americans of their religious freedom more than any other president, in my opinion.
Kamala.
She's a Marxist, 100%. And I think that if she really spoke her mind, we would be shocked to know what she believes in.
Okay. And what if Donald Trump phoned you and asked you for some quick advice on his next steps?
My advice for President Trump is to ultimately, surround yourself with good people. You've got to have strong, godly Christian leaders beside you, encouraging you. Ultimately, keep God at the center. Don't cower down to, these Marxists. Don't cower down to these rhino Republicans. Stand strong in the truth. Understand. He only has one last turn left. He doesn't have anything to prove to anyone. So stand strong. Stay in the Word. Be encouraged, and don't back down on common sense. Don't back down on the truth, because if we want to take this country back again, we got to put God at the center, because we can have a great president, we can have great leaders, but if we don't have God at the center, we're doomed.
Amen. I think it's also important to ask, what do you think of Annie Cyrus?
Oh my goodness, I love her. She's amazing. She's a fireball. I'm encouraged. I haven't even been able to hear her full testimony and all of the things that she's been through, but I know from several shows that I've been on with Mike and Derek, I know she's on several different, death threat lists, which, you're speaking the truth. You're out there fighting the good fight when you're on death threat list. But no, she's awesome. I'm so grateful for her and the work that she's doing, not only for Patriot TV, but for America ultimately.
Well, I'm right with you on that one. The Theglazov Gang exists because of her. I think it would be a nice way, important way to end just with this here. The way the left, especially these leftist feminists, are just, they're gnashing their teeth, they're cutting their hair, women's rights, and yet there's 400,000 missing children on our border, many of them being sex trafficked. Where is the left's concern for them? And I think that really crystallizes things, doesn't it, Hannah?
Absolutely, 100%. And you talk about women's rights, you talk about protecting women and children. They have not even mentioned, the Democratic Party hasn't said a word about the whole Laken Riley trial that happened this week. I listened to the 911 call. I've listened to all the videos. I've listened to the footage. It is egregious what was allowed to happen. And this is because of the Biden-Harris regime. And they've said nothing about it. It took them weeks to even acknowledge that young girl's name. You talk about the over 350,000 migrant children unaccompanied. We have no idea where they are. They're missing. Nothing. They have said absolutely nothing about it. It's disgusting, ultimately.
Hannah Faulkner, thank you so much. We've got so many people sitting on the edge of their seat right now watching our show. They should go to cultureof1776.com, correct?
That's right, cultureof1776.com. They can grab my book, check out the merch, and then my show link is on there as well.
Where else should they go?
Well, I have an Instagram, Hannah Faulkner 1776, and then my X page is Hannah F 1776. And then if you want to check out my show, that's on Rumble, the Hannah Faulkner Show.
And where's the best place for them to buy your book?
So the easiest is probably just to go to cultureof1776.com, because there is a link. As soon as you get to the website, it'll be a little like arrow. Click on the arrow, it'll take you directly to Amazon, or you can just look up Last Chance to Save Our Republic and you'll find it pretty quickly.
Okay. And what does it feel like to be a member of the Theglazov Gang?
Amazing. I am so proud of the work that you guys are doing, and exciting. It's exciting, crazy times that we're living in, but I have a level of hope that I didn't have 5 months ago, I have to say.
Oh, it feels so good. I cried when Trump came on stage when he won that night and started speaking. It was just, it's great to have the good guys in charge for a change, right?
That's right. Amen. Yeah. Amen.
Hannah, thank you so much for joining the Theglazov Gang. I hope you'll come back soon when we invite you. You are a wonderful, just beautiful patriot and warrior. Thank you for everything you're doing, and we love you here at the Theglazov Gang, and keep up the great work and stay strong, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah. And make sure to get Hannah Faulkner's book, A Last Chance to Save Our Republic. Get that book, read it, follow her, and support her. She is amazing. And we'll see you soon on the Theglazov Gang. Good night.